Hello, second graders. Welcome to another reading lesson with me, Miss Taylor. Thanks for coming. All right, let's see. Are we ready to read? Do we have our textbook? I've got my textbook here. Right here. Do we have a bookmark or a pencil? Bookmark or your finger to follow along, to track. Do we have our workbook? Workbook here. Pencil. Okay. Remember, please track with your finger, read each word carefully, pay attention to end marks. All right, some of our goals, we're going to read with accuracy and expression. We're going to understand what's happening in the story. We're going to make connections to characters' feelings. We're going to enjoy the story. Excuse me. All right, we know that reading is thinking. Let's keep these things in mind as we read. We're making connections and visualizing. We're asking questions. We're summarizing, kind of telling what happened. We are predicting and synthesizing and inferring. So, speaking of summarizing, let's think back to last time in our story. Umu and Ulak were on an ice chunk, and they decided that it was safe to jump on that ice chunk and just let themselves drift across. And that is what happened at the end of the last story. So there I just kind of summarized. I told sort of the main idea of what happened with Umu and Ulak last time. And some of us were doing some predicting. We were thinking, gosh, I don't know if this is going to go as they planned. Alrighty, so I bet we are going to continue to do some predicting and some inferring, kind of figuring things out from using what we already know, and then also clues in the story. Those clues are called text evidence. All right, so just like we usually do, we have a vocabulary sentence. We're going to review our 3 vocabulary sentences today. We have our word lists. We have a non-fiction passage. And today our non-fiction passage is about drifting. We're going to learn some facts about drifting in the ocean and how that's kind of like how that relates to the wind. So we know that wind is moving air, and there's something called currents in the ocean that are kind of like moving streams within the ocean. So that's our nonfiction passage. Our main story, our main fiction story about Umu and Ulak, and they are drifting on an ice chunk. All right, then we have some review items. We're going to do our workbook and read for 20 more minutes. Let's see. Oh, here's our vocabulary review. So our first sentence is, the horses became restless on the dangerous route. Alrighty. Let's see. Our next sentence is, scientists do not ignore ordinary things. So scientists pay attention to things. And our newest vocabulary sentence that we learned is, she actually repeated that careless mistake. Can you believe that? All right. So our first and only word list is on page 90. So would you please follow along with me? I'm on page 90. And on page 90, word 1 is careless. What word? Word 2 is gripping. What word? Word 3 is stung. What word? Word 4 is surface. What word? Word 5 is current. What word? And word 6 is drowned. What word? Miss Taylor's picture is covering up the D. Drowned. Oh dear. I hope no one's going to drown in this story. Alrighty, let's go ahead. We're going to move on to part B in our story. Part B, the title is Facts About Drifting. All right, let's get our fingers ready, our bookmarks ready. Please follow along with me. I'm on page 90. You're reading about an ice chunk that is drifting. Here are facts about how things drift in the ocean. Wind makes things drift. Okay, so wind makes things drift. If the wind blows hard, the wind will push things and make them move. The wind will make things move in the same direction the wind blows. Makes sense. The picture shows wind blowing a cloud. Which direction is that wind coming from? Everybody, what's the answer? Yeah, the wind is coming from the south, from down here in the south. That's where the wind is coming from. In which direction is it moving? North. So the wind is moving that cloud north. So which direction will it push things? North. Please touch ice chunk Z. So in your book, on page 90, you can touch ice chunk Z right here. It's Z. Show me the direction the wind will make that ice chunk move. So the wind will make it go this way because the wind is moving from the south and it's going to the north. So if the wind were blowing this, it would also blow it to the north. Same direction the wind moves. Ocean currents also make things drift. Ocean currents are like great rivers of water within the ocean. An ocean current moves. If you are in an ocean current, you will move in the same direction the current moves. Okay, so ocean currents are like these rivers in the ocean, which is kind of strange to think about these rivers, which are made of water, in the ocean, which is also made of water. But it's kind of a nice image to imagine there's a river within the ocean. Those are called currents. So let's keep reading. The picture shows two ocean currents, A and B. In which direction is ocean current A moving? That's this one. So ocean current A, it's like this river within the ocean, is moving to the south. It's moving down to the south. In which direction is ocean current B moving? Here's ocean current B, and it's moving this way. It's moving to the left, and that is to the west. Nice job. All right. So if you touch the ice chunk in current A, so here's the ice chunk that's in current A. Show me the direction it will drift if there's no wind. Remember, the wind is blowing to the north. But if there weren't any wind, which direction would this chunk move? Yeah, it would move to the south with the current. Touch the ice chunk in current B. Show me the direction it will drift if there's no wind. So again, if there were wind, it would go this way. But if there's no wind, it's going to move to the west because the ocean current is moving to the west. Remember the facts about how things drift. Wind makes things drift. Currents make things drift. Something in a wind moves in the direction the wind is moving. Something in a current moves in the direction the current is moving. All right, let's find part C, everybody. Part C is on page 91. Let's see, where are Umu and Ulak? Yeah, they're on that ice chunk. Remember in the last story, they were standing on that ice chunk and they were going to drift to the other end of the ice floe. And remember, the wind was blowing from the east, and it was blowing to the west. So the ice chunk should drift to the west. All right, so our title is Drifting on an Ice Chunk. I wonder what's going to happen. The sun felt very warm as Umu and Ulak stood on the drifting chunk of ice. The flies and mosquitoes were thick near the shore, but when the ice drifted into the open water, the insects were not as thick. So when they were close to the shore, so closer over here, there's lots of bugs all around, but as they're drifting out into the open water, there's fewer bugs. So it's kind of more comfortable, not so many bugs as they drift into the open water. So the open water is where there's no ice. Soon there were very few insects bothering Umu and her brother. So if there's very few insects, we can infer, we can figure out that they must be getting into that open water. All right, so they were getting pretty far out if there were very few bugs out there. Slowly, the ice drifted west toward the other side of the C-shaped ice floe. Let's rock the ice, Ulak said, and began to jump up and down on one end of the ice chunk. Umu moved next to him and began to jump at the same time that Ulak jumped. They're like treating it like a trampoline. The ice began to rock more and more, making waves and a great sloshing sound. The cold ocean water swirled and jumped, sometimes coming over the surface of the ice. All right, so they're jumping, they're having fun. The ice chunk is really rocking in sloshing water. So Umu was looking at the water, careful not to get too close to the edge of the ice chunk. She did not want to fall into the ocean. Suddenly, she noticed that the water turned dark. From a sparkling blue to a purple, and her shoulders were no longer warm. Everything looked darker. So, it sounds like I don't know, I get this feeling like something bad might be coming. The water is getting really dark. Her shoulders are cold. Maybe the weather's changed. Everything looks darker. Ooh, look at the illustration, the picture. See some dark clouds. So again, we can infer, we can figure out that maybe something bad is coming. We also know the title of, oh, actually, never mind. That's next story. I know the title of the next story. Did you already peek? It's kind of a clue there. Okay. All right, so the color of the water is changing from blue to purple. Her shoulders are getting colder, and she notices it's getting dark. The sun is going behind some clouds, and we know what happens when a whole bunch of clouds come out and it's kind of dark. All right. She looked south to see the sun, but it was behind a cloud. The cloud was not the kind of cloud you see when the weather is nice. It was a low storm cloud, a fat cloud that had a bottom layer that looked almost green. Ooh. It's like a low, flat cloud, a low, fat cloud, actually. So big and puffy cloud, and it was like green at the bottom. Like, ooh, this is some strange weather we're going to have. So, Umu knew about these clouds. Her father and the other men in the village had told many stories of the green clouds and how they brought winds that could sweep a boat out into the ocean. Well, maybe they don't need to worry because they're not in a boat. Oh, but they're on an ice chunk. Oh dear. All right. The men of the village told that anybody going into the ocean should look at the sky. Always look at the sky. All right, so that was kind of a rule that people said in the village. Anytime you go into the ocean, you should always look at the sky. Umu knew that as soon as you spotted a green cloud, you should get to shore immediately. Even if that cloud seemed to be many miles away, you should not wait. The cloud would move in very fast, and when it did, it would bring terrible winds and rain. Umu had seen green clouds before. Once they came and almost destroyed Umu's tent. The winds blew so hard that they knocked down the strong posts that held up the tent. Umu remembered that she and Ulak stretched out on the tent and held onto the tent posts as hard as they could. If they had tried to stand up, the wind would have blown the tent into the ocean. They were like laying on the ground, holding the poles down so that their tent, their home, didn't blow away. Oh my goodness. Umu remembered those things, but as she looked up at the great cloud that had covered the sun, she realized that she and Ulak had been careless. She's like, ooh, we weren't very careful. They hadn't followed the rule about watching the sky. So maybe she's feeling like, ooh, before we jumped in this ice chunk, we should have looked at the sky. Suddenly, the wind tore across the ocean like a great rake. The wind made a dark path as it raced across the surface of the water. So if you look carefully at the picture on the next page, you can see the dark places that the wind is making on the water. That place is dark because the wind is roughing up the water of the surface. The water was smooth in front of the place where the wind touched down. Where the wind hit the water, the surface was rough with sprays of water blowing into the air. That wind will blow us north into the open water, Umu shouted. Oh, let me try that again. That wind will blow us north into the open water, Umu shouted. Get down, Ulak, and find something to hang on to. Woo. All right, everybody, look at the picture. Touch the dark place where the wind is hitting the water. Ooh. Is that water smooth or rough? Yeah, it's rough. Touch the water near the ice chunk that Umu is on. Ooh. Is the wind moving the rough water toward Umu or away from Umu? Yeah. So the wind is moving the rough water toward Umu. And if the wind is coming from the shore, which way will it push the ice chunk? Yeah, it will push the ice chunk north into the open water. Oh no. Please read the rest of the story to yourself. Find out two things. Find out how fast the wind was moving and find out what Umu held on to. Go ahead and finish the story. If you're not finished, pause the video. Okay. Everybody, how fast was the wind blowing? 40 miles per hour. That's pretty fast. It came from the shore. In which direction did it make the ice chunk move? North. Oh dear. Everyone, look at the picture on page 93. It shows Umu and Ulak lying down on the ice chunk. The wind is blowing from the south. Point on the picture to show which direction the wind is pushing the ice chunk. Oh dear. Show me the place where the ice chunk would drift if there was no big wind. So if there's no big wind, the ice chunk, remember, it's moving to the west. Now show me the way the ice chunk will drift with the big wind pushing it. Oh dear. How did Umu hold on to the ice chunk? Yeah, he had one hand over the edge and the other was stuck in a hole on the surface of the chunk. So one hand is kind of holding onto the edge of the ice chunk, and another hand, he's found like kind of a hole in the ice that he's holding onto. Yikes. All right. Listen to that part of the story again and imagine how it feels with the ice cold water and the sounds of the waves and the wind. You might want to close your eyes and imagine what this would feel like and look like and how you might be feeling and make some connections to the character's feelings. Umu and Ulak got down and watched the wind moving from the shore. The wait seemed very long, but it was only a few seconds. The wind was moving about 40 miles per hour. Suddenly, the wind hit them. With a whistling sound, it hit. Umu held on with one hand over the edge of the ice chunk. She stuck the other hand in a hole on the surface of the chunk. The spray of water hit them. More wind, more spray, now bigger waves blowing and washing over the top of the ice chunk. The water was icy and the wind was blowing. The ice chunk was drifting straight north. out into the ocean. Are they going to be okay? We'll have to find out next time. All right, scholars, you're going to reread the story one more time on your own. You're going to answer the questions at the end of the story. Let's see, this time it is part D. Yep. You're going to complete your workbook. Lesson 18 for today. It is pages 33 and 34. And then you're going to submit your photos of this page. You're going to read for 20 more minutes. And I hope Umu and Ulak are okay. Yikes. All right, have a great rest of the day, scholars. I will see you again soon. Bye.